to do after you've heard about the sort of the overview and the logistics and the basics of the fellowship schemes is actually to tell you what it's like from the inside. So my background is that I'm a physicist by sort of degree, and I spent 25 years in the NHS as a healthcare scientist in radiotherapy. So I would be called a clinician under the sort of definitions that have been used previously, but I didn't have a specifically sort of hands-on role with the patients. I was in radiotherapy physics, so that was all the work that goes into creating radiotherapy treatment plans for our cancer patients. And I did that for 25 years in the NHS. Along the way, I had the chance to get involved with a research project at a very basic level at the time. And through that, one of the clinicians, one of the medics, suggested that I do a PhD. So having that not having been on my radar at all, I didn't think I was good enough to do that. I thought about it and then thought I'd try. So I did that self-funded and part-time over 5 years. So that was how I started to get into research. Following the PhD, I carried on with the clinical career. And then by chance, I happened to go to a meeting that was run by the NIHR, which was a bit like today. It was running through a whole load of funding schemes, and it was all completely above my head at the time. But at the end, they happened to mention these personal fellowships, which looked different to the ones that you've heard about today, but effectively they covered the same thing. And that sparked my thoughts off again. And I decided to apply for one at postdoctoral, so early postdoctoral level, which I was successful at getting. And then towards the end of that, I was still very enthusiastic about research, still wanting to push forward, I suppose, with my own career as a clinical academic. So I applied for what was then called a career development fellowship, would now be an advanced fellowship at the senior level. So that's me and why I'm talking to you this morning. Along that pathway, which I've described as if it was just very seamless from one thing to another, but as you know, life takes many twists and turns, as does research. Along that pathway, I also applied to be a mentor to people doing PhDs on the NIHR program, the doctoral fellowships, and I've been a mentor to two now successful NIHR doctoral fellowship candidates. So that's a bit about me and what I've done, and I really am here to share with you my how I approached these fellowships, some of the things I did wrong. I'm going to be very open about that so that you don't make the same mistakes. As I say, it's kind of my scars and my smiles, really. So you've seen this, and I think it was Wendy who said very rightly that it can be immensely confusing trying to figure all these fellowships out. And although I've both had them and listened to many talks on them, I think there can still be an element of confusion about them. I wouldn't worry too much, to be honest, because you can go in and out of these various schemes. You can come in at different levels. I came in when I already had my PhD, as I've mentioned. Other people might come in having done a pre-doctoral fellowship, or you might have done something completely different before you decided to come in. It's really about you, what you've done, and where you'd like to go. And we're here in the RDS to talk through which of these might suit you better depending on your background and what you want to do. Having said that, when I was looking at these and talking about these in the past, I did say to somebody who was quite high up with these schemes, I get very confused about them. And she said to me, well, the research, the ones in the green, effectively, the personal awards, they're for people based at a university, and the ones in the sort of orangey colour are for people based in the NHS. Well, I actually got both of my awards in the green scheme, and I was totally based in the NHS. So I think it's very much just try one that seems to fit you, depending probably on how much clinical development you want to do alongside, e.g. your PhD or your postdoctoral fellowship. And some people, I've supported people who've applied to both schemes. As you heard earlier, they run independently, so you can apply to both. So I sat, my 2 fellowships spanned what's now an advanced fellowship, or this advanced clinical and practitioner academic fellowship. But you can come in and out at all the different levels. So why would you even want to do this in the first place, particularly at the advanced level when the demands are so much higher and it's so much more competitive? Well, it is very prestigious. It's very prestigious for you, and it's very prestigious for your institution. And you get a really good amount of funding, you know, that has to be justified, and you have to put it together properly for you to carry out a substantial research project, particularly in these advanced awards. You will be looking, this would be one of the reasons why you want to do it, to move towards that independence. You basically, are you wanting to lead a research team in your area to develop other people as well as yourself, and a research area which might potentially lead to you becoming a professor at the end? Those are the kind of thoughts when you're getting to the advanced fellowship level you need to be having. You know, what do you want? Where do you want to go? One of the very good things about the schemes is that they give you the opportunity to have a bespoke training and development program for the research and you to take you to the next level. And a key bit of advice I would give for these advanced awards is think about what you're going to do next. Which seems a bit strange when you're involved in trying to do this award at this time, because it's really where you're going to, and having a clear direction about that and what you want to do next that will help show how serious you are in the current application and your ambitions for the future. And that helps you in terms of the competitive nature of these awards to be successful. Now, it's been alluded to before, but I can't emphasize enough, and this is, remember, I'm talking not as an RDS person, but as someone who's done 2 of these, that you really need to think very carefully before you do them. Do not see that the competition's open, log in and start writing. You need to be thinking at least a year beforehand, I would say, to do it really well, because you've got to think through an awful lot of things. You've got to think through what you want, what's your aim, who are you going to be, applied health, social care, public health researcher. What's your ultimate ambition? Do you want to lead a group? What sort of group do you want to lead? What's it going to be in your research group? And I think very crucially, is it the right time for you? And you need to think about that, because writing it is going to be extremely demanding and doing all the preparatory work. But you know, will the next few years, does that fit in with everything else that's going on in life for you? And we can't predict that, as we know, but try and do it at a stage that feels like it's right for you. And if delaying 6 months or a year, particularly if you're given advice to do that, looks like a sensible option, do that. There's a restriction on how many times you can apply. Better to wait 6 months and put something really good together than to rush something and lose one of your opportunities. And a core question when you're more senior is, why are you doing a fellowship and not applying for a research grant? Because they're very different beasts, and your application needs to make that clear. And the answer to that is personal to everybody, but it's going to be around how you're going to use what it gives you to make that next step in your career. And it might be, having thought through all of that, you decide actually a project grant is a better route to go, or there's some other route, or you might wait for a bit. And that is not a problem. There's no time limit. You do need to keep your research career going. You would still need to sort of publish and show you've got track record, but there isn't a set number of years by which you need to have done certain things. So you want to apply for an NIHR fellowship booklet, which we have on our website, which is given here and you'll find on our website, really goes into a lot more detail. It's a very friendly guide to try and help you think about your application, particularly before you do it, as well as giving you tips on how to do it well. So the core difference between fellowships and projects is the emphasis on you. So there's 3 pillars to a fellowship, really. There's the person, the project, and the place. So the bit about you is about your research track record, and particularly the impact of the research work that you've done up to now. At advanced fellowship level, it's your potential to be an independent research leader, or it's, if you're doing the more senior one, it's the stage before that. So you really need to demonstrate your next step is that independence research leader. And it's around what networks and what links that you've already established. With the project, it needs to have all the characteristics that a good project would have if you were applying for a project grant. So it's within the remit, it's the correct standard, it's appropriate for your career stage. So as you get more senior with these advanced fellowships, you would expect a bigger project that would involve you having somebody with you. For example, I had a postdoc working with me on my career development fellowship research projects. I got top-up money for, I applied for PhD money, but I actually decided I wanted a postdoc, and I got top-up money from the department in order that I could advertise it at the right level. And that's the sort of thing that they're going to be expecting from you at that level. You know, can you pull in resources from elsewhere, which demonstrates you've got that ability if you're running a group. In terms of the place, you need to be in the right place where they actually support you, and they need to support you very explicitly, not just as a general, it's nice we've got this person doing this. So all those conversations with the senior people that you're going to need, and as you get more senior, they're particularly important. You need time to do that, which is why I say you need at least a year to do this. And you have the opportunity to appoint mentors. I suggested 3 in my application. One was a subject specialist. One was a medic. So you remember I'm a physicist, so I had another medical physicist. One was an oncologist, because my area more broadly was cancer. And one was somebody outside of the local institution who was just a really good role model in an area much broader than the one that I was looking at. And what they will do when they assess your application is see what these mentors are bringing to the table. So you have to be quite clear why you've got these people and what they're going to do. And I was extremely fortunate, all 3 of mine were prepared to be engaged in helping me write the application, and also throughout my fellowship. They met with me regularly, gave me, you know, advice and suggestions, and introduced me to a broader network. And those are the sorts of things, when you're thinking about mentors at this advanced fellowship level, you need to think about what are these people going to bring. And sometimes you have to make quite difficult choices, that it's not necessarily somebody obvious and close to you, but it might be somebody that you are brave and approach just because they're outstanding in their field. And you see them as a role model, or they've got really good contacts or a subject area that would really support your fellowship. Just to show you why I'm saying this needs a year, this was my particular timeline with some, not all, of the activities that I was carrying out. So I started in April 2012 for a call that wasn't being open until October. And you can see the list of people that you need to think about. I started to think about finance. I can't emphasize how much value it is making friends with your finance team. On my first award, I made a complete hash of this. I didn't really get the whole finance thing. And there was a wonderful R&D finance lady who was prepared on the night before my application was supposed to go in for me to go to her house. This was in the days of wet signatures, wet ink signatures and paper applications. The day before it was due to go in, at 7:30 in the evening, she was prepared for me to turn up at her door and sign the paperwork. That is, I cannot emphasize enough, the wrong way to deal with your finances. Do not do that. I never did it again, but I'm sharing that with you so you don't make that mistake. Or just very fortunate she was prepared to be so flexible. So talk to your finance people, talk to heads of department. There's a lot of people that you need to get on board to support you so that your application is strong. You might need to talk to the clinical research network as well. There could be a requirement for you, even if you don't think your project's going to require them, there may well be a requirement for you to fill in an attribution of costs form. Don't worry if that makes no sense to you. That's why we have the clinical research network to talk you through. So there's a whole set of people before you even started doing anything about the writing. So I spent quite a long time having learnt and got my fingers burnt on my previous application. When I did my second more senior application, spent time doing all of this early. Obviously, you're thinking about the project, trying to sort the project out. You need to revise that, get lots of people to look at it, pull it apart, develop a thick skin. There's no point with any of this, being too precious about it. You need people to tell you what's wrong, to push you, to ask you difficult questions. You need those critical friends, really. The window for sort of entering your application and revising it is a few months. As you can see here, mine was mid-January. What happens after you've sent your application in is it goes out to the appropriate panel. They'll assess you with these advanced fellowships at the appropriate level for your stage. So if you only did your PhD a couple of years ago, you'd be at an early postdoc, then the expectations would be very different for if you did it 5-6 years ago. You've already been a postdoc and you're looking to something that's pre-chair. So they are fair from that point of view. They'll assess you at the right level, even though the advanced fellowships are all sort of all together, as it were. So your application will go out to panel members, 3 of whom will look at it in very great detail and score you, but the whole panel will make the decision about who goes forward to the next stage. Because we're talking advanced fellowships here, there's the external referee stage. So in April of that year, so this is a year after I'd started thinking about it and started my process, in April of that year, I was informed that I had got through stage 1, which is the paper application, that my application was going out to external referees, and then depending on what they said, I might be called for an interview. At that point, I decided that I would actually be quite positive and that I was going to get an interview, and I started my interview preparation. And the reason I did that was the window between being told when you're getting an interview and when the interview happens is quite short. And to do proper interview preparation, so having several mock interviews, I wanted to get that into people's diaries. So I didn't know the result, but I thought I'd prepare as if I had an interview and get my teams to interview me, do mock interviews in the diary, and more importantly in their diaries, because it's easier to give people space. If you're not called for an interview, than it is to try and get the time with them if you are at short notice. I then did my interview preparation. I had my interview in July, and the result came out. After that, I was successful, as I've alluded to, and then I started the following January. So the reason I've gone into some detail with that, this is my personal experience, it isn't some theoretical, this is how it works. It's just to give you an idea of some of the mistakes I made, but some of the better decisions that I made, like setting up for mock interviews, so that I was really well prepared for that interview when it came. So what have I learned through the whole of this process? Well, you cannot read the guidance in detail enough. Just really make sure you know it's a long document, but there are people to help you through it. Just really make sure you know all the aspects, what they're expecting to see in all the different parts of the application. Look at the panel members and their expertise, which is unlikely to be yours. And the importance of that is you've got to write in a way that non-specialists understand really clearly. And that is not dumbing down, it's writing good, scientific, appropriate language, but in a very clear way without your specialist jargon. Write a compelling story. You can write in an engaging and enthusiastic manner. even if you're talking about a research project, it doesn't have to be dry. In actual fact, it shouldn't be dry, because you want other people to be as excited as you are, and you need that to come over. With the stack of applications that people are going to be going through, yours has got to stand out by looking you've got to look interested and excited by your own application, otherwise other people won't. You want an ambitious and tailored training and development program. So think broad as well as deep. It's not just about what you need for the research. What do you need for yourself? And that will vary. Some people will need a brush up of their statistical knowledge or to learn a new methodological technique. Others might need to presentation skills training or leadership training. It's whatever's important for you. Patient and public involvement is right there at the beginning, as should be equality, diversity and inclusion. And the RDS, again, can help you with all of these things. Now, because we're talking advanced fellowships, why do you want that and not your project grant? And we've talked about, alluded to a few things about that. And you've got to be convinced that you really want a fellowship and not a project grant. Otherwise, you're not going to convince the panel. And just be clear on the impact or pathway. I've said to patient benefit here, but really to benefit the NHS or social care or public health. Be clear on that. So other thoughts from me. Write accurately without jargon, as I've said. Don't be afraid to use headings, highlighting, bullet points and white space in the application. Make it so it's easy to read for somebody who might be late at night after they've done a very long week, could be a Sunday evening. They've got 20 applications they need to go through. Don't allow yours to slip past because you've crammed all the text together and it's impossible to read and they can't work out what's the key bit and what isn't. You need to justify all your resources, including the support post, which you can apply for when you're doing an advanced fellowship. Use as many pre-submission reviews. Again, the RDS can help you with that, but so your institution should be bought in enough to you to also offer reviews and mock interviews. And delay rather than do a give it a try application. I just want to do it now, give it a try application I have seen inside and outside the RDS has not been successful. Be persistent. It might well be the first time round you don't get it, but then use that feedback to go back, try again, and put in an even better application the next time. As I've said, we're here to help you. The RDS support is tailored to your needs and we can work with you however's best for you. And it's never too soon to start the discussion about applying for a fellowship. Even if you think it might be a couple of years off, come to us just to flag up that we've got lots of events like this one that cover all sorts of aspects of grants. Having talked to us about fellowship, you might actually decide that you want to do research for patient benefit or social care grant instead. And we've always got something or some way we can support you with that. Thank you ever so much for listening to me. And I'd be really happy to have a chat with you and hear your questions. I'll do my best to answer them. Otherwise, we can find another way to answer those for you if I can't. So if I stop sharing now, that's probably best, Wendy, isn't it?
Thanks, that was really interesting. I'm not sure how much time you've got left. It says 3 minutes 38 seconds on the
right, I'm sorry,
but who knows. Anya was going to give us a 5-minute warning, but anyway, has anybody also Vanessa's got a question. Do you want to ask your question, Vanessa?
Yes, do. And can I see your face? That'd be lovely.
Sure.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for talking us through your experiences. I just had on the end that you're talking about kind of submitting and using the feedback, and I was just wondering, would you recommend kind of redeveloping and submitting the same plan, the same concept, or a new concept from scratch, kind of based on broadly the feedback and recommendations?
You can go with the same concepts. Yeah, you can put the same project in. What you would need to do in your second application is detail very explicitly how you have responded to the feedback you got. So say you were great, your institution was great, but they had a few questions around the project. They weren't quite convinced that was as great as you and your institution. That you probably get some feedback that was quite explicit about what you need to do to that project. And they would expect in the second application that you put in that you would detail and show what you've done to meet the answers. So no, it's not, you know, if you get rejected from other bodies with a project grant, you can't go back with the same thing. It's not the same. You can go back with the same thing, but it would need to move up a level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Thank you so much.
I suppose it depends what the feedback says. If
Yeah, of course. If they say we really don't like it and you should submit something else, then yeah. But, yeah.
Thank you.
Has anybody else got any questions? I've got a quick question, Ellen.
Yeah,
is there anything that you would, if you could go back in time, you would have done differently?
Oh yeah, really, really good question. I told you about the mistake I made on the first one, messing up the finances big time. What did I do wrong on the second one that I would have done differently?
Would you have applied for a PhD fellowship if you'd
no? Well, would I have done? No, I don't think I would have done actually. I just because for me, definitely the right route was the one I took. So the part-time PhD running alongside my clinical job. It was tough because I didn't get any extra time in the first 3 years. I had to do it all at weekends and in the evenings. But I think at that stage, to be honest, I wouldn't have got a doctoral fellowship under this scheme. And I think that's important to say because it's you don't have to do the PhD with the NIHR in order to get the later awards, and I think I'm demonstrating that. And sometimes it's not right to do the PhD that way because it takes a heck of a long time to get these things, and you might just want to get on with it, which is what I wanted to do at the time. I couldn't see any other way of funding it. The department weren't being terribly helpful. I didn't even know about the fellowships at the time, so I just went for it myself. And I think that's a strength. I probably use that as a strength for the fellowships.
Yeah, the fact that you've done your PhD.
Exactly. And you just 29 seconds. And just to say, you do have to. Sometimes you do have to be quite brave. And, you know, and looking back, I think that was quite a brave decision. Kind of go for it, but it was a successful one because I think it really helps the advanced fellowships.
Yeah.
Sorry, we haven't been able to chat more, but you can always come back later.
And put any questions in the chat if you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Lovely to see everybody.
Thanks everybody. See you on the other side.
Right, welcome back everyone. As we've all been in parallel sessions, I just wanted to check with Anya. Are we going to be able to go back to Jörg, or is he going to, the other option is he was going to record his talk and we were going to share it with everyone afterwards?
Hi everyone. Yeah, while you were in the breakout rooms, we did try to do a tech fix, but it didn't work. So I think just to keep things running smoothly, Jörg is going to record his session, so it will be available to everyone afterwards. So thanks for bearing with us.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. Apologies again, and hopefully we will get you that content, so you will definitely have that. In that case, let's have a 5-minute break and come back at 11:25 to talk about patient and public involvement with Katie and Fumni. And thank you so much, Ellen and Natalie, for sharing your experiences. I'm sure they were very valuable. So see everyone back in 5 minutes. Okay, welcome back everyone. Hopefully people are back from the break and we can move on to our next session, which is about the importance of patient and public involvement in your fellowship application with Katie and Fumni. So I'll pass over to you both.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Can you see this?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Okay. Welcome, everyone. So we'll be talking about patient and public involvement in research. And I'll be co-presenting with the wonderful Katie Turner. She's one of our public contributors at the RDS. We'll be going over what patient and public involvement is, why, and how. I particularly will be taking on the what and the why, and Katie will take on the how, and then we'll conclude. We hope that at the end of this, you get a very good insight into what it is. We'll have links at the end where you can get some more information, hopefully. But this will be a quick run through. It probably covers as much as you need to know to begin searching and digging in. So what is PPI? Some people think of it as a gray area. It depends on your research, and people ask questions. What should I do? Is it just conversations with people one-to-one? As a focus groups? Is it a subjective thing or an objective thing where I need to collect actual data or enough information to be able to guide my research? What's this all about? And do I need to be an expert? What should I consider? Do I take on everybody's opinions? What do I need to do? And really, it could be all of these things or just some of them. How do you decide? I think the very fundamental, straightforward way to help you understand what PPI is to think about this definition of involvement. And it is, according to Involve, research being carried out with or by members of the public, as opposed to them, about them, or for them. So you are really going with or by, and that's where we want to go in terms of involvement, as opposed to, about, or for. It's not to say that doing research to people or about people or for people is a bad thing. It's just that it's not rightly placed when it comes to involvement. That really comes under participation, where people take part, and it could be about them, it could be for them, and they take part as participants within research. But when we say involvement, they come in at a different level, and they help guide the research, and they work with you in a different capacity as opposed to being participants. And what does that mean? Who are your public? Who are these people we're trying to describe? The public could be very wide ranging, could literally be anyone, someone may argue. But sometimes it's best to think about it as from the point of view of your own research. Think about who would benefit, what would be useful for people relating to your research or with regards to your research. So we could have patients, we could have potential patients, we could have carers, people who use health and care services or social care services, or people who represent them. So the public could be wide, but when you think about it in terms of your research in particular, it's best to consider who would be the beneficiaries, who would benefit from your research, and you can think of them as public as you begin to involve them in your work. And then back to involvement, how, in terms of, Katie will talk about the how in detail, but practicalities to just help you understand the approaches you could take. You could think of these approaches as four, there could be more, but just again, for simplicity and clarity, you can think of it as consultation, collaboration, co-production, or service user control. And when you think about these, it really speaks to power. How much power does each of you have, that is you as a researcher and the people you involve in? And as you go down this list, power becomes more intense or increases towards the members of the public, or shared, as opposed to you being the researcher and having so much control over the work. So with consultation, you are asking for people's opinions, and all of these are good. So it's not to say consultation is the poorest and service user controlled research is the best. Not to say that. You have to consider your own research. However, you need to know what each of them is and how you can apply each of these approaches, or which of them not to use at all. With consultation, you're asking people's opinions. You're trying to find out what they know, how they can contribute, what their experiences can bring to your research. But it depends, you decide, really, it depends on you how much of these you take on board. As opposed to collaboration, where there's more joint working, so people can help develop your questions, your interview sheets and guides, and you take that on board even more so you work together with them. It sometimes feels like a fine line between consultation and collaboration. Sometimes you start off trying to do consultation and you end up with collaboration, or vice versa. But it's just really about if you consider it in terms of how you respond to what has been given to you, then that could help you distinguish them more clearly. Co-production is a big one. There's lots and lots are out there regarding co-production, but this is where everyone has equal power, in quotes, if you want. You can describe it in this way, where everyone brings their ideas and their thoughts to the table and everything is considered. And together, you and those you're involved in your research work together to develop, design, walk through, share everything about this research. And of course, service user control is where people actually take charge of the research themselves and you support. So we go on to the why. Why do we have to involve the public? Why is this so important? Is it compulsory? What if people don't respond to me? What if I can do anything about it? I've tried and it's not working. And can you really get all the perspectives? Really all the perspectives? Why do we need to do it? Does it make a difference? And why really? Well, there are some very important things to say. Research shows that it's very important and it can help you research in different ways. But the first thing to say is that it can definitely certainly improve your research, the relevance of it, and the quality of it, because if you're speaking to people who know a lot about or have experience about the subject area or what you're trying to investigate, how much wonderful or much better it is to speak with them, and they can guide your research in wonderful ways. Again, this is a very quick overview, so we can't go into fine details, but by all means, reach out to us and we can talk to you about your research in particular. But there's so many ways people can bring relevance and quality to the research you do. There's a moral imperative, if you want. This is research about people and paid for by the public, and it will be very useful to have them involved. And also, if these two things don't convince you in any way, it is actually compulsory. You may be disappointed to hear this, but you really have to demonstrate how you've involved the public in your work as you apply for various funding streams that we've been talking about so far. So I will pass on to Katie at this point to talk about the how.
Oh, thank you, Funmi. Just checking, can everybody hear me? Wonderful. Okay. So I'm going to just spend 10 minutes or so going through the how and giving you a few examples. And could we have the next slide, please, for me? Thank you. And I'm going to use the UK Standards for Public Involvement as a framework to talk a little bit more and explore a little bit more about the different aspects, if you like, of PPI and how you might consider and use them in your research. These UK standards were developed around, I say, probably 4, maybe 5 years ago now by a UK-wide partnership. They were designed to sort of encourage reflection and help researchers and a research team evaluate alongside the progress of the research what's going well and what can be learned from and changed. And they can also be used, very importantly, to help you design, review and assess the involvement that you decide to have in your research. These standards are very much a guide, and the things I'll cover are by no means exhaustive, but just to get us started. Next slide, please, from me. So the first of those standards is inclusive opportunities. And this is all about being very clear from the outset about who you need to involve. So that's very much about matching the experiences of the people you want to involve with the end users of your research project. and target your recruitment to get your PPI involvement so that it reaches the very groups you want to get involved. It's quite hard if you've been involved in PPI before to sort of keep using what we call, and this is in no way derogatory, the usual suspects. People are very keen to get involved in research, but it's good to open out the field and get new people involved. And be very transparent in your approach, in your recruitment approach. Explain how and why and that you're choosing people, and be very clear about your selection process. Also very important in this part is to identify and address any barriers to involvement. So think about location, transport, timings of meetings, frequency. Do people have disabilities, caring responsibilities, or work responsibilities? And obviously we are in an online world at the moment. That makes some things easier and perhaps other things a bit more challenging. Next slide, please, from me. Working together. So this is working together in a way that values all contributions, builds and sustains mutually respectful and productive relationships. And for me, I talked about this in her part. I think for me, the most important thing here is the need to, for me, was talking about power. And it's very important at the outset to really address what we call hierarchies of knowledge. Research knowledge, clinical knowledge, often what the public and patient people can bring is even now regarded as somehow inferior to that. So it's all about trying to create a level platform so that you know, everybody's perspective and expertise in from their particular experience and knowledge is reflected and explored and shared and used. Next slide, please, from me. Support and learning, really important. I found in my work, both as being involved as a PPI representative and as guiding and advising others to involve people, that you really need to build in your support and learning at the beginning. It's about offering and promoting support and learning opportunities, building confidence and skills for public involvement. Make sure you've got your budget sorted out, you've got an adequate budget, and that you've covered payment and expenses, and you're clear about how much you can offer people and how you'll do that. There's different types of support, so you might be supporting your PPI reps with sort of problems with, I don't know, transport or location or caring or all those sort of practical things. But it's also important to really be aware that if people use their lived experience, their personal knowledge of the subject matter that you're researching, you know, it's going to touch on very personal memories, experiences, and often that triggers a whole range of feelings, which is great in a way because it adds to the research, but you need to make sure that that is adequately supported. And it was one thing that isn't really, to my in my opinion, supported enough. It's often overlooked. Next slide, please, for me. Communications. So I think we all hopefully appreciate the need to use in plain language. As a researcher myself, I often fall into the trap of using research jargon and quite rightly get pulled up on it. It really do try and use plain language and in your research tools and methodology, so that people understand from the outset what you're doing. And actually, it's a really good exercise. I was involved in an earlier presentation and we had a really good discussion group, and people were saying, well, it's not about simplifying, you know, research or dumbing down. It's about opening it up and you know, presenting it in a way that everyone can understand and it's accessible to everybody. So that's really important. Also keeping people informed, you know, keep that communication line open so that you keep people informed along the route of your research about what's happening, how their impact is affecting the project and what the outcomes are. Next slide, please, from me. Impact. So I guess this is about thinking about improving your research and the research process by sort of identifying and sharing the difference that public involvement makes to research. And often people say, well, you know, it does make a difference, but you will be asked how it's made a difference. And there's lots of ways you can do that with your PPI team throughout the course of a project. You can hold reflective spaces where people have a chance to think and explore in a safe space how their contribution is impacting on the project. And you know, you can keep minutes, you can keep notes of focus groups or meetings you've had with your PPI team to really note down what they've said and how that's impacted the project. That's really important. But I would also add, it isn't about just proving, if you like, that public involvement works. It's about improving, I like to think it's about improving how we work together. So there's that constant reflective process, which I think is helpful for any research team. Next slide, please. And the final standard is governance. So this is about the public truly being involved in decisions about the governance of research. So making sure that the research is managed properly, that it's doing what it said it would do, that it's ethical, that it's well regulated. Often this part sort of gets a bit lost with PPI, but it's very important. If you have people with that lived experience on the governance, if you like, the governance sort of meetings like a trial steering committee or an advisory group, they can really help to make sure that the research is keeping on track and considering all those ethical issues that sometimes occur to people with that lived experience that may not occur to others. And on to the next slide, please, from me. So I've just had a real whistle stop through those standards, and obviously there'll be time to ask questions and perhaps explore those a bit more, but I'm just going to go through a few top tips. Obviously, involvement as early as possible is really good. That doesn't mean to say that if you involve people at a later stage that it's not worth doing. It's very worth doing. But I think you'll find if you involve people as early as possible in the thinking about what you might research, you will find your PPI contribution is much richer. I've talked about accessibility, both in terms of practical issues and in terms of keeping your communication, your language very clear. Make sure you've got enough resources within your team, or if you're doing a research project on your own, to really support the public and patient involvement. And that is all about not only practical things, funding, but also that support that you will offer. Make sure you've got training and support. Acknowledging the expertise of the patient and public is very important. Often doesn't get done enough. And obviously it's always really good to be clear about what you're doing in your research and what you expect people to do in their roles. That's my bit. And for me, I'll hand over to you to finish up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Casey. That was very lovely. I hope it's helped. So we're clearly talking about applications and what to do with them, and you've understood hopefully a bit more about the what, the why, and the how of PPI. But back onto the application itself, what do you need to know? Again, this is a very quick overview, and your research will be bespoke. So please speak to us just so that we can help you properly in a very tailor-made way. So you will be asked, you have to demonstrate really seriously that you have considered PPI right at the outset, and how you've applied PPI or paid attention to PPI all through the life of your project. So you'll be asked how the public have been involved and how they will be. So this is you planning ahead. So far, what have you done? And we have the Public Involvement Fund, which could help you begin to work on your PPI side of things before you even write up the application and send it off. You'd be able to explain the roles of the patients, the public, and whoever you're working with. And as Katie has been talking about resources, what have you done to support them, and what do you have, what are you including? And of course, the plain English summary. Sometimes this could be a very challenging one for researchers to write up because we're so used to speaking in a certain language. But your members of your PPI team could really help you with the plain English summary. And also addressing how PPI will be managed, how it will be reported and evaluated would also be checked. And then the why, or why you're working with a certain group of people, who would you be working with, and how does this all fit into your application? So hopefully all these will help. And then as we just conclude, we've talked about the what, the why, the how, and hopefully, although very quickly, we've talked about what patient public involvement means when it comes to your applications. We hope that this has given you a sense of what to expect. Thank you.
Thank you very much from me and Katie. That was great. If anybody's got any questions, put your hand up now. But we do have a question in the chat. Lainey, do you want to ask your question in person?
Yes, I'm happy to. I did ask this in the breakout session earlier, but we wondered if it might be useful in this session. It was just about whether or not you would recommend disclosing that you were a person of lived experience, either in the application itself or on the interview stage, if you got through to that, and whether it would work for you or possibly against you. Just anyone's thoughts about that would be great.
Hi Elaine, can I ask, is that you talking about yourself as putting forward
yes.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you my perspective, which is coming from the lived experience. And I would say if you've got lived experience of the topic you're researching, then yeah, if you're happy to disclose it, I think it's a fabulous thing to do. It shouldn't count against you. You know, you have your research credentials, and your lived experience will only add to that. And also, if you're involving other members of the public or people with lived experience, they'll really kind of be comfortable with the fact that the researcher themselves has lived experience and kind of knows where they're coming from. I mean, I would make sure that, you know, whoever your supervisor is on board and has the adequate resources to support you yourself with it as well. Because, you know, it can be a tricky thing to manage, as I found to my cost. But yeah, my response would be very definitely, it's a positive thing. But as I say, that's coming from my perspective.
Thank you.
And I would add that you're worried about whether it would work against you in terms of bias, or it's sort of not showing. But I think you can make it clear in the application that you're not sort of on a fixed path, and you're open-minded about, you know, as long as you show that you've got equipoise about whatever the intervention or whatever you're researching. I don't think that should go against you. I think it would, as Katie said, I think it could only help.
Thank you. Great.
Anybody else got any comments on Lainey's question? Claire?
It reminds me as well about Richard, what his point was about telling that narrative of why, and I'm sure Natalie touched on it and Ellen would have as well. It's an integral part of your story and why you're interested in doing the research that you're doing. And fellowships, you know, unlike the research programs, fellowships are personal awards. So it is part of that journey that the NIHR want to support with their fellowship program. So yeah, I would just agree.
I was also going to just comment. Oh, sorry, Katie.
No, go ahead for me.
I was going to say I do second lots of what's been said just a moment ago, but just for you to also be mindful of yourself. If it's a challenging experience you've had, and making sure that it doesn't if you want, traumatize you in any way, and you're comfortable, it could be a very good thing, and especially if the members of your PPI team know that you, just as Katie said, you've had the experience. It could really turn the research in a very, very good way, bringing relevance as much as you can, really. So yeah.
Brilliant.
Sorry, can I just quickly add? I mean, it's really interesting what you said, Wendy, about bias, because I remember we had a big conversation about this a few years ago when I was working, and you know, that was one of the things that people used to say, oh, you can't have PPI because, you know, you've got that bias. And we used to say, well, every researcher has a bias because they bring their own experience, whether it's lived experience of something else, or their connection with clinical services, or their student experience, or their knowledge. So for us to sort of try and say that research is unbiased is I think, you know, I know no one's saying that here, but I think there's sometimes that argument is used against PPI. And as others have said, it's about being really well supported and being really clear also about how you yourself will use that lived experience in your research. You know, what's your lived experience going to bring to that research that you're doing that's going to really make a positive impact?
Thank you so much, everyone.
That's really, really interesting. Katie, can I just go back to what you mentioned, the usual suspects? Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I should find another phrase for that, because it does feel a bit derogatory, and it's not meant in that way at all, because I've been one of those usual suspects, and I often think, you know, someone else should be, you know, I mean, we do have other people coming in, but I have a group of people where I work at St George's, and they're a very close-knit PPI team, and they advise researchers on their research projects, and it works brilliantly. But we always want to get in, if you like, new people with new experiences, different lived experiences, because you can get quite narrowly focused. And we like to have as wide a representation as possible. So it's not about not welcoming people who really want to get involved and are happy to get involved on a regular basis. It's about involving those people, but also keeping the doors open to invite new people on board. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Because sometimes there can be people who almost become experts and researchers because they've done so much PPI, and they don't have that sort of lay, they're no longer lay, are they? Lay representative. They sort of become experts and don't notice.
Yeah, I don't agree with that, I have to say.
Okay.
Because I've been a researcher now for getting on for 20 years. So, I mean, I've learned a lot about research, but for me, that's knowledge. That's your knowledge base.
Yeah.
And for me, using your lived experience comes from a different place. So you're using your experience to add to that knowledge. And it's the perspective of how you apply that knowledge rather than you becoming an expert in your lived experience. That's personally how I see it for me. Yeah. So I try and think, right, my research skills are about me knowing how to do research well, ethically, rigorously, and then I'll apply the lens of my own lived experience to that research knowledge. I kind of think, you know, there's lots of terms about, oh, people come professional sort of lived experience experts, and I kind of think, well, people come professionally in every field, but it doesn't mean to say that you lose something. It's a challenge to really continue to find a way to use your lived experience in an appropriate way. That's certainly really important. It's not just every meeting you go to, you know, this is my lived experience. It's important to hear the narrative, but then you need to kind of apply it to the research.
And I suppose it's getting a balance and a broad range of people, of PPI input, isn't it? That's the important thing, not discounting the usual suspects. But we must find a better phrase for that. Claire, were you gonna say something?
No, sorry.
Has anybody else got any questions? No. Right. That's the end of that then?
Yes, thank you so much, Katie and Wendy and Wendy. I was just going to kind of, if anyone has any general questions for anyone, again, please keep asking. I'm just going to wrap up with just some information about where you can get support. for your application. If today has been helpful in deciding that you do want to apply. So of course, as Richard said, the NIHR Fellowships website, and I put some of those links in the chat, so you should all have access to those. You'll need the support of, depending on where you're based, either the research office at the university, which you'll be taking your award, if you're looking at the doctoral, the pre-doctoral, the masters, the R&D office in your trust or local authority or public or social care organisation, if you're a practitioner based in any of those. If you are based in Kent, Surrey, and locally in the southeast and are affiliated to University Hospital Sussex, Sussex Partnership, the University of Sussex, or Brighton and Sussex Medical School, there's the Joint Clinical Research Office, and I've given you the link there. The Clinical Research Network are also really helpful, and they will help you with the SOE-CAP form that I think we've heard mentioned, and kind of some of the financial and treatment cost estimates of some of the work. If you are perhaps needing the help of the clinical trials unit, there are some links there. They may not be so appropriate for fellowships, but then again, they may be. And also I put the link of our applied research collaboration, the ARC, that's for Kent, Surrey and Sussex, and they have particular research themes that might be helpful in terms of identifying potential mentors and supervisors for your project. And then of course, there's us at the Research Design Service. So there are 10 RDSs nationally across the country, and we in the southeast cover Kent, Surrey and Sussex. So if you're based in any of those 3 counties, please do get in touch with us. If you're joining us from outside, please do find your local RDS, because you will have one. And we give free and confidential methodological advice and support for any health and social care research funding application. And to get our support, we just ask you to fill in our client inquiry form, and we will team you up with an advisor, someone like myself, Wendy, Fumni, and we will be a one-to-one support you throughout your research application design sort of journey, and be able to pull in other people who have different methodological expertise and specialisms along the way as your project may require. We have a booklet specifically around NIHR fellowships. I put the link in the chat earlier. You'll have these slides, and I would encourage you to have a look alongside the much longer guidance from NIHR itself. And we've also released recently an EDI toolkit. So this helps you think about equality, diversity and inclusion throughout the various aspects of your research design and plan. So again, the link is here, and I'd highly recommend that you have a look for that. Finally, if you've enjoyed today's events, we have a whole range of kind of online webinars and workshops that might be of interest. And we also hold drop-in sessions every week if you want to just have a quick chat quite informally with an RDS advisor about your thoughts. Our next big webinar is on the 28th of September, where we will be talking about the different research programs. So as distinct from the fellowships that we've concentrated on today, these are the different research programs that fund study teams to do pieces of research. And that's on the 28th of September. So we'll hope you'll join us. Oops, I will stop sharing now. And oh yes, and Anya has very helpfully pointed out, we'd love to hear your feedback. So if you have any thoughts about this event, please do fill in our evaluation. And apologies again for the technical difficulties. Jörg is so sorry that he wasn't able to share his experiences with you all. So what he's going to do is record his session, and we will send that out to everyone and make that available on our website, so you will have access to that. Thank you all so much. And if there are no more questions, hopefully we'll be seeing you soon to support you in your application.
Thank you, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.